Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining Conveyor Meetup. So today we have Ramon from the Tackle team who's going to be going over overview of Tackle 2. Before I hand it over to him, just want to let you know that we will be saving Q&A for the end, so that way Ramon can get through all his slides. If for some reason we don't get to it, I'll put the link to the Conveyor Slack channel, so that way you can put your question in there when you can get an answer. And aside from that, if this is your first time to Conveyor Meetup and you want to make sure that you keep getting meetup invites and the recordings, just make sure you subscribe to the email list at conveyor.io. And with that, Ramon, I'll give it all to you.
Okay, hello everyone. So welcome to another edition of the Conveyor Meetup. Today we will be discussing the new features, the new exciting stuff that we have included in Tackle, the second version of Tackle, the second major release of Tackle. And without further ado, let's get started. And first of all, you might be wondering who I am. So first of all, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ramon Nissen. I'm a senior product manager in Red Hat. And I'm currently leading the contributions from the Red Hat side to the Tackle project in the Conveyor community. So let's get right to it and start discussing Tackle. So before getting into the new features that we have in Tackle 2, I thought it would be interesting to have an overview of what the Tackle toolkit is for those who are not familiar yet with the tool. And each time that I talk about Tackle, I usually like to get started with the vision statement that we have for Tackle, which I think is simple but very ambitious at the same time. So let me read through it. We want Tackle to become the ultimate open source toolkit to help organizations safely migrate and modernize their application portfolio to leverage Kubernetes, providing differential value on each stage of the adoption process. And I always like to stress the word safely, because if you guys are familiar with the application refactoring and dealing with source code and adapting source code of an application to run on a different platform, you definitely know that there is no magic in there. There is no pixie dust. There is no magic button that you just push and the source code gets adapted to the target platform. If anyone is telling you that, he's probably lying or missing a big chunk of the picture. So our approach with Tackle is rather different. So we have a two-pronged approach in Tackle. On one hand, our key idea is to provide as much insight as possible for the adoption leads to make informed decisions for these people that are leading Kubernetes adoption initiatives. So provide as much insight as possible for them to make informed decisions. And on the other hand, the tooling is about giving the migrators, the developers that are performing the actual changes, as much guidance as possible and some degree of automation for the adaptations that might be required on the source code for the applications to run on the target platform. So to sum things up, two pillars on our tooling. First of all, provide as much insight as possible for these leads, for these adoption leads that make the decisions, for them to have something to base their decisions on, for them to make informed decisions, and on the other hand, provide guidance and some degree of automation for the developers. The idea behind these objectives is to reduce risks as much as possible and make the whole migration and modernization process as measurable and predictable as possible, so organizations can confidently get into this kind of adoption and migration projects. So Tackle has been on the market for some time already. We released Tackle 1.0 almost a year ago. And traditionally, it has been based in a couple of functional modules. First of them, and the core of the user experience, was the application inventory that allowed organizations to have a holistic view at their application portfolio. And the idea behind that was just to allow these organizations to see their whole portfolio, be able to classify their applications in application types, and from there come with suitable migration strategies for each one of these application types. And for that, the inventory provided an extensible tagging model that allowed the adoption leads to classify the application portfolio in as many dimensions as they might want. So it's a good way to coordinate and manage in a centralized way the application portfolio for these adoption and migration initiatives. And on the other hand, we also had the application assessment module, which was called Pathfinder back in the day. And this is a questionnaire-driven assessment. The way we work is we show a questionnaire to the user, which serves as a script for a meaningful conversation to make sure that we address all the different concerns that might have an impact on the analysis or the assessment of the containerization suitability of a given application or application type. So the idea here is that the user goes through this questionnaire, provides a series of answers to the given questions, and afterwards the tool is able to identify the potential risks that might have an impact that should be taken into account when going through this containerization process of a given application or application type. And that was it. That's what we had in Tackle. So Tackle 1.x, we had a couple of releases, 1.1 and 1.2, but now we are releasing Tackle 2.0, which, like I was saying before, is a major milestone in the capabilities and the features that are available in Tackle. So right now, let's get right into it and let's see these exciting new features that we have put together for this new release. First thing that we will be commenting is the new architecture model that we have adopted for the tool. So basically what we've done is we refactor and re-implemented most of the backend of the tooling and made some minor tweaks on the front end as well. And we have switched from a microservices approach to a hub and spoke architecture, basically to ease the integration of external toolings into the main Tackle user experience. As some of you might know, Tackle is comprised with of a series of projects, and the idea here was to make integration as easy as possible for other projects into the main user experience. So in this new architecture, we will have Tackle Hub as the central component, and again, the driver of the user experience. And this Tackle Hub will be the main data store for the application. So we will be storing information about applications on the hub, and then using add-ons to enrich that information that we have in the hub by gathering data from the applications using different processes. Or we can also use add-ons to integrate with external systems to act on application source, meaning doing things like maybe automating some changes on the source code, or maybe injecting deployment manifest. That's the kind of stuff we were thinking about when we designed this add-on model and this hub and spoke approach to the whole thing. So as I was saying before, we have refactored the backend, and we've made the tool as Kubernetes native as possible to improve the scalability. So the objective here is for Tackle to run on a consultant's laptop using Minikube, or on the most powerful Kubernetes cluster out there. We want the tool to be able to be aware of its surroundings and scale properly depending on the resources available on each scenario. So talking also about refactoring, we have created a completely new operator from scratch. So we completely re-implemented it using Ansible this time. Like the previous operator, this one is available in all Kubernetes distributions. So if you have vanilla Kubernetes, you can use the version that is published in operatorhub.io. And if you're using OpenShift, you can use the Operator Hub flavor that comes out of the box with OpenShift. So as I was saying before, this Tackle 2 is already available, so it's already published in there. You can go to Operator Hub, each of these flavors, and have it installed in your cluster. And I would say the key feature that we have with this new operator is it has capability level 2. And because of that, it allows seamless upgrades of your Tackle instances. In the past, you had to run some scripts to upgrade between Tackle instances. That won't be the case anymore, at least on the 2.x versions. If you want to migrate from Tackle 1.2 to Tackle 2.0, you will have to use a CLI that we put together to export the data. But once you are in Tackle 2.0, you won't have to do anything for your instances to get upgraded automatically. We also have enhanced the configuration management model in Tackle. So now for example, we allow things like the authless deployment. So we thought if you are deploying Tackle in your local environment using Minikube and nobody else is going to access it, it doesn't make that much sense to deploy Keycloak alongside the rest of the Tackle components. So we thought it would be a good idea to disable that and have full access from the get-go. And we also have configuration related to the volumes that the Tackle deployment uses, like the sizes of the volume or the storage classes that it will use. And right now we have two different CRs, Tackle for the Tackle Hub instance, and the add-ons for the different add-ons that might be surrounding the instance. And this is it regarding the infrastructure side of things, but let's talk about functional features and all the new stuff that we have included on the new release. So first of all, we have the administrator perspective. And the idea here was to create a dedicated perspective for administrative tasks and options, to separate the admin configuration options from the main business options available for the, let's call it, mainstream users. And the idea that we had for the design was to have a similar approach that it's currently available on the OpenShift administrator perspective and have two separated perspectives with different options on each one of them. There's also a big change in the different profiles available in Tackle. In Tackle 1.x, there were no profiles. There was just a super user that could access everything. Now we have split the user base into different personas. So we have the administrator, which will have full access to the tool, to both of the perspectives and full access to the application portfolio. And then we will have the architect and the migrator personas, which will only have access to the developer perspective. The idea is that the architect will be able to manage the whole application portfolio, create, delete, update applications, and run assessments and analysis. And the migrator will only have read-only access to the application portfolio and be able to run application analysis. One cool feature that has been demanded from the field from quite a long time is the integration with repositories. I don't know if some of you are familiar with Windup and MTA before, but in order to run an analysis, you had to gather the binaries yourself, gather the source code yourself, and pass it as a parameter to the analyzer. So that thing, when you were dealing with a large organization, it was difficult to scale with that approach. So what we did here is integrate the application inventory with source code and binaries repositories. For example, source code, Git and Subversion, binaries, Maven artifact repositories for Tackle to be able to retrieve binaries and source code on each analysis rather than forcing you to gather them and provide them in advance. We will see an example of that later on. But if you're dealing with source code and artifacts in a corporate environment, of course, this might be protected resources. So to allow that, we also implemented a credentials management feature that allows you to secure multiple credential types. So source control, to access Maven corporate repositories, we also allow to store Maven settings files. And this is a little bit of a spoiler, but also proxy credentials. And the idea is to have a decouple approach to the management of the credentials. So credentials are managed, created by administrators, but can then be assigned to applications by architects without needing them to know the actual contents of these credentials. So a fully decoupled model that somehow depicts what was available back in the day, for example, in Ansible Tower or AWX. And next thing, I've already spoiled this thing, proxy integration. This one was also a request from the field. Corporate environments usually rely on the usage of proxies. So it made sense to ease the integration with proxies from the UI UX. So you can configure your own HTTP and HTTPS proxies to access external environments like Maven repositories, or maybe if that's the case, to access corporate corporate instances of GitHub or GitLab, just to make sure that everything can be accessed using the proxy without having to tweak configuration at container level, at operator level, to make things as simple as possible. And probably the biggest feature to discuss today, would be the application analysis. So what we have done is to bring the capabilities of the wind-up project that was powering the migration toolkit for applications and have it fully integrated with the application inventory. So this application analysis module allows you to run static analysis against source code or binaries, and it's based on an rules engine that is able to detect anti-patterns that might be preventing you from, or might be preventing an application from running on a target platform. Right now, the analysis module is focused on Java applications. Maybe in the future we will support other languages, but on this first release, what we have done is leverage what was already available in the wind-up project. And as I was saying, rules engine, it supports a lot of migration paths and creates reports that we will see later on, providing tons of information about what would have to be changed for the application to run on the target platform. So regarding the integration, again, we have integrated the wind-up project seamlessly into the application inventory. So in the same fashion that it was possible before to run an assessment from the application inventory, now it will also be possible to run an analysis as well. And one of the cool things is that we're leveraging this integration with the repositories to streamline the user experience. So you don't have to download stuff yourself, retrieve stuff yourself, and then pass it as a parameter. The tool will take care of all that kind of tasks by itself. And it's oriented towards bulk analysis. We have modeled this thing in a way in which a wind-up becomes an add-on to the Tackle Hub. So it basically, Tackle will be able to spin up pods that will run analysis and then inject the information back into the application inventory. So it allows you to run analysis at bulk. You can run the analysis of thousands of applications, and the task manager and Kubernetes itself will take care of the rattling of the throttling of this whole thing. Regarding analysis, for those who were familiar with wind-up already, with MTA already, in those tools we had the source and binary analysis modes. It could work with a source code and binaries by decompiling the binaries. But now we have introduced a new mode, which is called source plus dependencies. And the way it works is that it will retrieve the source code from the source repository. Then it will parse the POM file, retrieve the dependencies that have been detected on that POM file, and add it to the scope of the analysis. So you will have the full picture on what needs to be analyzed for the applications. You won't be missing the libraries that the application might be using, which usually are one of the trickiest part to migrate. So it's an idea to allow migrators and adoption leads to have the full view, the full picture of what needs to be analyzed. Also, we have introduced or streamlined the user experience when it comes to choosing the scope of the analysis. Before, you had to manually choose the packages that you wanted to analyze, which didn't scale well when you were dealing with more than probably 10 applications. So what we have done here is to make it simpler for the user. They will have just to choose whether they want to analyze the source, the internal libraries and the internal dependencies of the application, or if they want to force the analysis of known open source libraries. Before, wind-up skipped these known open source libraries, but there could be cases in which it could be interesting to force the analysis in of these open source libraries, because maybe the problem that might be preventing you to migrate towards the target environment or platform could be in these open source libraries. So it allows the user to choose the scope depending on their needs. And let's talk about, this is about the configuration, but let's talk about what's the output of the analysis. And what we will be getting once the analysis is executed is a report with different tabs that provide different information of different nature. Main thing in the context of migration could be the issue identification. And in this context, we consider issues as everything that might be preventing an application from running on the target platform. So the idea is to identify on the source code itself where the issues might be happening and provide hints on what needs to be changed. So it's about detecting anti-patterns and providing hints on what needs to be changed to solve them. We will see an example of that later on, as I was saying. Aside from that, we also have the technologies report. Usually in large organizations, when they're dealing with a large portfolio, there is a tendency of kind of forgetting the technology stack of certain applications which might not be maintained anymore. Maybe the team's left, maybe the application has been somehow or half decommissioned and there's nobody out there maintaining it. So sometimes in the context of migration, it's interesting to have the full picture and all the details about the technology stack that was used to develop an application. And this report provides very precise information about the technologies that were identified after the analysis. So pretty useful in the context in the field. And finally, we have the dependencies identification. So this functionality allows you to, using the hash of the dependencies that might be embedded, for example, in the binary that was analyzed, or maybe the dependencies that were retrieved on the source plus dependencies mode. Based on the hash, this thing is able to identify the coordinates of the dependency into Maven Central. And this is especially useful when you're dealing with legacy, very old applications that might not be using any dependency management tool like Maven or Ivy used with Ant. So there could be these legacy applications that had everything manually embedded into a WAR or ER file. And if you're trying to Mavenize that application to bring it into the cloud, into Kubernetes, it is definitely useful to know the actual coordinates of the different artifacts that were manually embedded into the original binary. So pretty interesting for this kind of large-scale migration projects as well. And regarding the different migration paths that we support, the tool comes with a very comprehensive set of migration paths out of the box. Windup was born back in the day to tackle the scenario or the migration scenario from between application servers. But we have evolved this thing, as I was saying before. This is a rules engine, so we have added new rules to tackle things related to cloud readiness and Kubernetes. But all the previous migration paths are supported still. So plenty of stuff in there. But you might be wondering, what happens if I'm interested on a different migration path? Or, for example, if in my company or my organization, we're using corporate frameworks and maybe migrating from traditional application server to cloud, it's just a matter of migrating from corporate framework A to corporate framework B. What happens in that case? Well, for that, we have custom rules, a custom rules engine. So this rules engine that we've been commenting is fully extensible. So you can create your own rules using a fully documented XML syntax, which is pretty simple, yet very powerful. And that will allow you to create rules for your custom migration scenarios. Or if you're creating these rules for a new technology that hasn't been tackled before, then you can contribute back to the community to see if this thing gets accepted, and we cover and we enrich the different migration paths that we already have available in the tool. So that's it for the new features that we have available in the tooling. We will see an end-to-end demo in a matter of minutes. So we will have plenty of opportunity to see what's in there and see it in action, which is the most interesting thing. But I will also wanted to take the opportunity to talk about how Tackle is being built together. I don't know if you're that familiar with the Conveyor community, but this thing was a joint effort created between Red Hat and IBM in the beginning, but we are welcoming other GSIs as well, and we will potentially have new collaborators in the short term, I would say. But right now, I would say among the different Conveyor community projects, Tackle is the one that is seeing the most collaboration between Red Hat and IBM, and concretely IBM Research. So we have contributed the Tackle Hub project. This is what we are discussing now on the heart and the core of the Tackle 2 user experience. Also the Windup project, which will give, which is backing the Tackle analysis capabilities. The Pathfinder project as well. which is the one covering the assessment module and tackle. But there are other projects that have been contributed by IBM Research. They have been open sourcing some of their IP. And the idea is to include and have these projects integrated as soon as possible in the upcoming tackle releases. So one of the key objectives that we had when we created this add-on approach was to make the integration of these different projects as easy as possible, to be able to have them available in the main tackle user experience in the short midterm. So talking about short, midterm, long term, let's discuss the roadmap. And you have to be aware this is an open source project, so things might change in the future, but I'm pretty confident about the current roadmap. So main milestones, well, June 2022, we've already released Tackle 2. This thing was released on June 16th. It's been available for almost a couple of weeks already, but we're already planning the next releases. So probably by the end of August, we will have Tackle 2.1. It's still yet to be determined. Probably late August, early September, we will have Tackle 2.1, which will include integration with Viva, the transaction analyzer that has been contributed by IBM Research. They have had a full integration of Viva into Windup, and we plan to leverage that on Tackle 2.1, and also a couple of minor enhancements. For example, bulk delete of applications and an enhanced user experience for CSV imports that will allow to create missing entities during the import rather than having to seed everything in advance. And later on, probably by the end of Q4, we want to release Tackle 3. And with Tackle 3, as I was commenting before, we want to have this enhanced integration with other Tackle projects. So right now, we are currently targeting Tackle Test Generator and TCA, Tackle Container Advisor, to enhance the user experience and automate the generation of certain assets. And the same goes for Move2Kube. We would like to leverage what Move2Kube can provide in terms of the automated generation of deployment manifests and the analysis of the technology, or the preliminary analysis of the technology stack of an application that it currently does. Again, very tentative, but I'm pretty confident about these milestones. And without further ado, we can get into the demo. So the demo scenario that we will be seeing today and discussing today is based on the retail application example that has been shared before inside the Conveyor community, which, well, if you've seen the end-to-end demo video, you might be familiar with this example. But it's all about a monolithic application that has different domains. In this case, for example, it has customers, orders, inventory, but all managed inside a monolithic application deployed on a Tomcat instance, a very traditional stack in the end. And the idea is that an organization has started carving out microservices out of this monolith. So we could have a situation in which some of these microservices have been carved out. We have the inventory and the orders microservices that are tackling these two domains, and they have put together a gateway and a new front end, and everything has been deployed in Kubernetes. But the remaining domains, only customers right now, are still on the monolithic application, and the gateway is connecting and integrating everything and putting everything together. The end scenario that we want to have is, for some reason, they need to shut down this data center, and they need to migrate this customer's application as it is. Well, this retail application that has the customer's domain needs to be migrated as it is towards Kubernetes. So the end game or end state will be migrating this customer's application towards Kubernetes as it is, meaning it won't be refactored as a new microservice. It will still be a Tomcat application running on top of Kubernetes. So we need to figure out how to do that, and that's what we will be doing during the example. So give me a second to rearrange my screens and share my Tackle instance. One second. Can you see my desktop now?
Yes, you're good to go, Ramon.
Okay, cool. So, for those who are not familiar with Tackle, well, this is the application inventory. This is the, as I was saying before, the main driver of the user experience. We have already imported all the applications from this corporation or from this organization into Tackle. That can be done using a CSV import fairly easily, but we won't go into that. So now we have all our applications in here, and we will be focusing on these retail applications, so we can filter by business service and retail. We can see we can see customers, orders, all the different applications in here. And as I was saying before, Tackle comes with an extensible tagging model that allows you to classify applications in as many dimensions as you might want. In this case, in this example, the tags have been used to describe the technology stack that has been used to develop each one of the applications. But a tag can, in the end, mean whatever might be useful for the adoption leads to classify applications in application types, to then, as we were discussing before, try to find the most suitable migration strategy for each one of these application types. That's exactly the trick to follow for being able to manage large scale portfolios, meaning hundreds or even thousands of applications. So, for example, we're seeing that this customer's application, this is the legacy bit of the monolithic application. So it's being modeled using, it's been deployed in Tomcat, it's been developed using Java, it uses an Oracle database, and it's running on a RHEL 8 VM. And we can also see this tag in here, corporate custom configuration library. There seems to be more information. This is already telling us something that we should be aware of. Usually configuration is something that is pretty sensitive when you are dealing with the containerization of an application. So we will probably have to be mindful about this tagging here, and we will see later on some details about the impact that this corporate custom configuration library might have in our application and in its migration in the end. If we keep scrolling, we will see that for the other applications, we follow the same approach, and we can have the description of the technologies in which these things were developed using the tags. But let's get into the assessment part of it. So let's kickstart the discussion to gather more detail about the environment and the landscape in which this application is running. So we can choose the customer's application and click on assess. We already have this assessment filled out in the interest of time, so we will continue. So first screen that it will show is the stakeholders and stakeholders group. The idea for this assessment is to serve as some type of script to have a meaningful conversation that addresses all the different concerns that need to be addressed in order to make sure that we're not missing anything in this containerization initiative. So it's all about having something that makes sure that you won't forget anything important that should be taken into account when you are migrating this application, when you are containerizing this application or application type. So if it's a script to maintain a conversation, then it makes sense to have a history of the different stakeholders that have been involved in that conversation. So there are plenty of stakeholders involved in this thing and different departments like the retail management and the IT management. We can go next. And then the questionnaire is presented. So there are different questionnaires addressing different concerns that need to be taken into account, as I was saying before. So things like application architecture, application technology stack, application lifecycle management, licensing, or any business process that might have any kind of impact on how the application is managed and that might have any potential impact on how to containerize or determine the suitability for containerization of a given application or application type. So we will skip through the questionnaire. We've already filled up these or answered these questions. So we keep moving on. And then we can go into the review screen. So this will act as a summary of the findings that the tool has had about the application or the application type that we are analyzing. In this case, is the customer's application. And we see on this pie chart in here or donut chart in here that there are a couple of medium and high risks that have been detected. If we scroll down, sorry for that, we can see the different risks that have been detected. So let's go through them. So we have one that is related to how the application handles this service discovery. It says that it's using technologies that are not compatible with Kubernetes, like hard-coded IPs. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're talking about a legacy application, a traditional application running on VMs. So it kind of makes sense that it's using hard-coded IPs to access external resources like the database, for example. So this shouldn't be, it's something that has to be addressed for sure, but this shouldn't be a big deal when dealing with the application. The most interesting one, I would say, is the next one, which is telling us about the configuration model that this application is using. So it's telling us that there are multiple configuration files in multiple file system locations. So during the conversation, it might have been detected that this application is using this custom library, custom configuration management library that happens to be loading configuration from these different paths in the file system, which would be an anti-pattern when trying to make this application, I wouldn't say cloud native, but at least cloud friendly. So if we're dealing with containers and everything, we need to be very aware about the application trying to find stuff in the file system. So it kind of sounds like there is something wrong with that library we were commenting before. So we need to take a look into our source code and try to replace that library and follow a more standard approach, a more cloud-friendly approach for managing that configuration. So now we have what the risks are and what has been detected. So we can scroll up and go to the proposed action, to the migration decisions. So we know that we will have to remove that library and make some changes in some of the configuration files. So the proposed action would be refactor, because we're actually adapting and changing the source code for it to be at least cloud friendly. But I would say if we're only dealing with removing one library and adapting some configuration files, I would say the effort will be definitely small. So, and also we can document what is the business criticality and the work priority to work on that later on. That's some meta information that could be interesting as well. And with that, we can submit the review. So we will have the details on what's the proposed action and the effort estimate. So now we will be ready for the next natural step for this application. So we already know that there is a rogue configuration library, something that is not cloud friendly, that needs to be removed. So the next step will naturally be analyze the application and try to find where this library is being used and if there are any other anti-patterns that we should take into account to migrate the application. And for that, we will have the new analysis tab on the application inventory. So if we take a look at this application, we click on the edit button, we will see that we have the source code and binary coordinates of the application. This repository right now is private, so it's not public. So I will need some credentials to access the repository in the end. And the artifact itself is also private on a private Maven repository. And again, we were talking about this configuration library, and probably this custom corporate configuration library is not available in Maven Central. So we will be likely to have to access corporate repositories, corporate restricted repositories that store and host these dependencies for the analysis. So in order to do that, we will have to assign credentials to this application for Tackle to be able to retrieve the source code and the dependencies for the analysis. So we haven't said anything about the new admin perspective. So we have the perspective selector in here. So we will be switching to the admin perspective. First thing that we will be displayed is the credentials. So here we can manage the different credentials that we will be using to access external resources. In this case, I have created a credential to access my GitHub private repositories. And I also have uploaded a Maven settings file to be able to access these private Maven artifact repositories to retrieve dependencies and artifacts for the analysis. So I can create a new credential. There are different types. as I was saying before, source control, Maven settings, proxy. Let's go and create what we call test. Say we're using source control. We have two options in here, username, password, and it also supports private keys with path phrases, depending on your authentication mechanism in your repository. But well, we won't create anything because we already have all the credentials we need set up in here for this example. So let's go back to, or maybe we can go through the different options. We also have options related to repositories. Right now, the configuration is pretty simple. It's just about allowing Tackle to consume insecure Git and Subversion repositories, meaning repositories that are using self-sign certificates or are published through HTTP, which is a very common scenario in corporate infrastructure and scenarios in the end. And we also have this Maven configuration entry that allows you to manage the local artifact repository that is used as a cache to make the retrieval of dependencies faster, and also the possibility of consuming insecure Maven repositories as well. And finally, we have the HTTP and HTTPS proxy configuration options. Nothing too exciting, but really useful in the context of these corporate environments. So going back to our example, let's start working on the analysis for this customer application. So we will go into the analysis tab. Let's make sure that the credentials have been assigned. We can go into manage credentials, and we see that the GitHub credential has been assigned for source, and the Maven credential has been assigned for the settings to be used. So we are good to go with the application. So we can kickstart the analysis. I click on the application and I click on analyze. So first thing to take into account, the analysis mode, as we were discussing before, binary and source code. This will go to the Maven artifact repository or to the source code repository and retrieve whatever you have chosen. And we also have this source code plus dependencies, which will retrieve the source code, parse the POM file, and retrieve the dependencies from the corporate artifact repository. We will choose this one. And if you're dealing with a single application, you can still upload a local binary and work as people was used to work with windup and MTA back in the day. But for the moment, let's choose this source code plus dependencies analysis mode. Moving on, then we will have to set the migration targets. We were discussing this is a Tomcat application that we want to migrate as is towards Kubernetes. So containerization for sure. No need to migrate to a different runtime. We want to keep Tomcat. And I will also choose OpenJDK to make sure that we are using OpenJDK instead of the Oracle JDK. You know, the licensing problems that people has had lately with Oracle JDKs. So just to make sure that we don't have anything that might be preventing us to use OpenJDK instead. And also, I will also choose the Linux rule set just to make sure that there are no Microsoft paths pointing to Microsoft routes inside the source code, and that we are good to go to run on Linux containers. So targets, containerization, OpenJDK, Linux. We can go to next. We will discuss this before, the scope. Right now, we will focus on the application and its internal dependencies only. I'm mostly I already seeing the technology stack here, and I'm confident that there shouldn't be any problems with the open source libraries that we're using. So application and internal dependencies should be good enough. Next, so as I was saying before, one of the objectives for this analysis was to find this custom configuration library. So for that, we will need to add some custom rules that look for this library and provide some alternatives and I would say more straightforward or current ways of consuming configuration in the context of Kubernetes. So I already have this rules file that contains a rule that will look for for this concrete library. So I will add it to the scope of the analysis. It's in there, so we can click next. We have a series of advanced options. We already set up the targets, but if we wanted to narrow the analysis, we could also include additional sources just to avoid some rules from being executed. And in the same fashion, if there is a certain rule that I don't want to execute for some reason, I can specify which one shouldn't be executed during the analysis. If I click on next, I will see a review screen with all the analysis configuration. But in the interest of time, we won't run the analysis. It will take around a couple of minutes for this application. We already have the analysis results in here. So I will cancel the analysis and we can go into the results, into the report that I already have available for this application. So if I click on the report, I will see the report that the analysis module produced for this application and its dependencies. So it shows two different rows, one for the application itself, and then one related to the dependencies that have been retrieved for this application. If I click on the application, I will navigate to an overview tab, a dashboard tab, in which I see all the story points and the incidents that have been found during the analysis. But I would say the most interesting thing in the context of application migration and modernization will definitely be the issues tab. And I was saying before, we understand issues as everything that might be preventing the application from running on the target platform. So in this case, we have found some cloud mandatory issues. One of them is this related to this legacy configuration library. So this has triggered this custom rule that we have added to the analysis scope. So it looks like it has found occurrences of this configuration library in this persistent config file. If I click on the class itself, then I will navigate to the source code itself to see where the problem, where the issue has been found, right into the source code itself. So I can get, essentially, I can drill down as much as I want into each one of the issues, even to the line of source code that might be an occurrence of the issue itself. If we get back to the issues, we will also see that there are some story points associated to the issue itself. Story points are not directly translatable into man hours, but give you an idea, a relative idea of the effort required to solve a given issue. So in this case, one story point per this. It's a fairly simple thing. It's just a matter of swapping one library and making some slight tweaks in the source code. In the hint that is provided in the report, we can provide snippets. We can have links to external documentation, whatever you might want. So this could be especially useful when you're dealing with a corporate migration, corporate framework migration scenario, in which these links could be pointing to the internal wiki of the organization itself. So this is it for the issues. Also, yet another interesting thing will be the technologies report, as we were discussing before, which will show the different technologies that have been identified during the analysis. So it will give you information that is pretty precise about the technology stack that was used for this application. In this case, since we're dealing with the source code of the applications, we don't have the dependencies. But if we navigate away to the dependencies folder, then we will see that there were other issues that were detected on this configuration library. It seems like it's loading configuration from the file system itself. That's exactly what we were discussing before. And we can also see the list of dependencies that have been identified by the tool. And I would say that's it for the demo. I think we're reaching the top of the hour, so I guess there might be some questions from the audience. Jonathan, back to you.
Thanks, Ramon. So everyone, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. At the moment, I don't see any.
I hope it's because it was pretty clear.
I thought it was.
Or maybe boring. I hope not.
Have you had anyone try out any of these new capabilities yet or get started?
Oh, yeah. We have some guys from Red Hat Consulting that were expecting or waiting for this thing for a long time that are already using this thing on the field. I know that some GSIs are also excited and started at least using this thing. I wouldn't say they have started using it in their engagement right away, but at least testing what these new capabilities can offer in their approach. And yeah, also some organizations / customers out there that were also pretty excited about this thing.
Awesome. So getting some questions here. So it sounds like it was very clear based on the feedback, Ramon. For the slides, everyone, I posted a link to it in the chat. And here's a question. When will Tackle 2 be available in the OpenShift Operator Hub catalog? Right now, he's only seeing V1.2.
It should be available already. Probably you're seeing 1.2 because maybe you're not selecting the right channel, but it should be available already in Operator Hub in OpenShift. It's from what I know, it's already available in the upstream operator hub.io and on the Operator Hub available in OpenShift. So if it isn't, there might be some problem right now, but from what I know, it's just a matter of choosing the right channel.
And Jeremy, if you have any issues, you still can't find it, please reach out to Ramon on the Slack channel. That way, because if you're having that issue, maybe some others are as well. All right, next question is about secrets. So is a store for the secrets native Kubernetes or some additional mechanism to store those just for Tackle?
So we are leveraging the native Kubernetes approach for secrets. So one of the key objectives that we had with Tackle 2 is to make it as Kubernetes native as possible. So for example, the way, some depending on what you define as secrets, if we're talking about the credentials, those are stored safely in the main database from Tackle. But when they are injected into the add-ons, for example, for the application analysis, these are passed as Kubernetes secrets across the different pods of the architecture. So some of the stuff is stored on the database, but then it's injected using Kubernetes secrets for them to be used by add-ons in the end. I hope the answer was clear.
All right. And I don't see any more questions. Everyone, if you do have questions later as you start using Tackle or any of the other tools, feel free to just reach out to us on the Conveyor Slack channel. That is in the Kubernetes Slack. And just look for Conveyor there as a channel.
Yeah, right. All our engineers hang out in there. I'm there myself also.
Got another question for you. So can we run Tackle 2 standalone without OpenShift as Podman container?
Well, Tackle doesn't require OpenShift, but it does require a Kubernetes distribution. So if you want to run Tackle locally in your laptop or in your workstation, you will definitely need to provide a Kubernetes distribution. So the way we have envisioned this thing is to have a Minikube deployed locally and deploy a Tackle on top of that. But we do require this Kubernetes distribution because of what we were discussing before, the way we inject stuff between the Tackle Hub and the add-ons. Everything has been designed to be Kubernetes native, thus it requires Kubernetes to work properly.
All right, and this sounds like a fun question. What is the name of the downstream product for Tackle 2?
Okay, this is going to get a little bit confusing. So some of you might be familiar with the migration toolkit for applications. So up until now, meaning migration toolkit 5, migration toolkit for applications 5.x, we were using the windup. We were productizing the windup project. What we have done is contribute and integrate windup into Tackle, and the next generation of MTA will be based on Tackle itself. So the name of the downstream product for Tackle 2 will be Migration Toolkit for Applications in the end. We will be creating a new generation. We're basically shifting the upstream for MTA towards Tackle to have a more comprehensive user experience in the end.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Like I said, if you have any more questions after this, feel free to go in the Conveyor Slack channel. Until next time, bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.